Hi, my name is Pam Killeen, and welcome to my podcast, Truth Over Spin, where I like to interview guests about media propaganda or corruption in science. Before I tell you about today's guest, I want to share a couple of things with you. First, if you are listening to this, I would encourage you to go to video because I will be embedding some slides throughout the interview. Also, in the interview, I refer to a previous interview I did with Katie Pisitny about the potential culling of her ostriches by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency here in Canada. And you can find that interview on my other podcast, Circadian Reboot. Also, I would encourage you to listen to a previous interview I did with Dr. Chris Shoemaker, who is a medical doctor who lost his medical license for questioning COVID policies. And that interview is the interview I did just before this one on this particular podcast, Truth Over Spin. One of the subjects I am most passionate about is corruption in science. And one of the reasons why is because I used to be very good friends with Professor Joe Cummins. Professor Joe Cummins passed away several years ago now, but he was like a second father to me and taught me exactly what's going on in the scientific community and how and why scientists who speak out and tell the truth can be attacked by the powers that be. Because, of course, if the science doesn't help support whatever their agendas are, they don't want it published. They don't want these scientists speaking out. And one of the subjects that Joe had studied heavily included biotechnology, included gene therapy, which is what my guest and I are going to be talking about today. And I remember Joe telling me that if they unleash this technology on society, the health repercussions could be severe, that gene therapy could trigger uncontrollable inflammatory responses in certain individuals. He was a harsh critic of the biotechnology industry and had many questions about this technology before they set up shop in Canada. He told me that in the 1980s, he went to Parliament. He went to the federal government in Ottawa because they were having hearings about biotechnology. As a world-renowned geneticist, Joe drove to Ottawa from London, Ontario, because he had a few very important questions to ask the officials who were attending this hearing. When Joe asked these questions, he told me that the powers that be at this meeting weren't too happy, and they actually threatened to take him out in handcuffs. Ultimately, they never did answer his questions, and as we know, they did set up shop, not just in Canada, but in other areas of the world. And they are inflicting this gene therapy on us, not just through our crops, through transgenic crops that are in secret locations around. I know that they're here and around London, Ontario. And Joe used to tell me that if that genetic material is floating around in the air, so to speak, and somebody with a very compromised immune system breathes in that genetic material, it could cause serious health effects in that individual. So he was doing his utmost to warn people about these secret transgenic crops. And now, of course, the situation has gotten much worse, and they're actually using this gene therapy, this biotechnology, if you will, in vaccines. And we've seen some terrible side effects from people being injected with these mRNA vaccines. And this is why I want to bring on today's guest, Dr. David Speicher. Dr. Speicher has a stutter, but his science is very, very clear. He has been heavily ostracized by his bosses at various universities. He's been fighting a David and Goliath battle ever since he was young. Because of his stutter, his teachers actually discouraged him from seeking an academic career. Yet despite that hurdle, he has become an extremely distinguished scientist, and he is now shouting from the rooftops, warning us about this reckless technology that they're using in vaccines, and they actually have plans to make this technology more widespread. And we'll get into some of this during the podcast. But for now, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dr. David Speicher. Dr. Speicher is a molecular virologist who has conducted research in Australia, India, Kenya, Cambodia, and Canada. Despite a severe stutter, Dr. Speicher has been sharing and teaching scientific truth throughout the whole COVID pandemic. Dr. Speicher confirmed the adulteration of the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 mRNA vaccines by showing the high level of plasmid DNA and the presence of the SV40 promoter and enhancer. This work has been discussed worldwide, including the USA Senate and European Parliament, and was instrumental in Florida State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo calling for a halt to the COVID mRNA vaccines. Dr. Speicher is also an expert witness in several court cases against the mandates and vaccine injuries. He was also recently featured in a powerful documentary by Dean Rainey called Why Can't We Talk About This? We will be discussing many projects Dr. Speicher is working on, and I will be sure to put the links in the show notes below. Thank you for joining me today, Dr. David Speicher. It is an honor to have you here with me. You are definitely fighting what I would call a David and Goliath battle against the powers that be with regards to the mRNA vaccines that they put out back in 2020. And I hesitate to use the word vaccine, by the way, because they're not really vaccines, they're gene therapy. I want to start off this interview by calling you the stealth ninja that you are, because I heard an interview with Maria Gacci, and she talked about how she got the vials to use secretly in a Tim Hortons parking lot for testing. And on top of that, the world didn't really even know what you were doing. You were sort of in the background doing this research, while a lot of the attention was on a colleague of yours, Dr. Brian Bridle, who had been speaking out against the COVID vaccines and so on. But you secretly seem to be doing a lot of this stealth ninja work in the background to uncover what you uncovered, which I think the world deserves to hear about. So I think we should start by talking about what happened in 2020 that got you started in researching the ingredients, what you're finding in the mRNA vaccines.
Well, it is so nice to be here to share, talk. I've been very much, as you used to say, a stealth ninja working on things behind the scene, as it's been a very difficult, challenging 5 years. I am a PhD just since I started in 2005 PhD in the field in 2012, and I've worked in Australia, India, Africa, Cambodia, came home to Canada in 2014 as my wife was somehow with child, and we had to choose where to give birth, and so we came home. I worked at Master University and St. Joe's Healthcare since 2016 as a postdoc research fellow and doing diagnostics on STIs, C. diff, HPV, and then in January of 1T, our whole team changed to COVID research to find out what is going on? How do we diagnose it, test for its sequence, it set up PCR tests for it. And I was first sidelined March 17th of 2020. And I was asked, well, I was called in to a HR meeting with my supervisor, and I was told I did something wrong. I was being investigated, put on leave, and I could work at home on basically anything except related to the pandemic. Now, I am a research scientist, and my job is twofold: make good observations and ask the difficult questions. What's going on and why? And so I basically asked things around the lab leak theory, the whole HIV sequence in the virus, and two, if it's such a bad pandemic, why are our borders still open? And so I was called into a HR meeting, and I asked 10 times, what have I done wrong? And I was told, you'll find out next week. Each time, you'll find out next week. And I'm like, one, I'm a postdoctoral fellow in training. Therefore, let's work on things, talk about it, teach. And two, if it's such a bad thing, like, let's have things on the table. And it was that I was asking those difficult things, and they just didn't want things talked on. I was given 10 weeks of silence. I wasn't told what I did, what the investigation showed, nothing. And so it came back with two very simple things, easily argued. I was called back to work the start of July of 20. A month later, I was given, and Mac hands out one of these every year, that's all, a postdoctoral leadership award in 2020, and then 2 months later, I was fired for not doing enough work, and in that time off on leave, I obtained my own research funding and published 6 papers. So it started to head off early, rushed, and at that time you feel isolated, alone, and I thought at that time that I'm starting off in my field. It'll ruin me. I'm done. And I didn't know at that time it was God's design to set me apart, to basically look at the vials, ask things, and avoid getting this toxic shot. And so I questioned everything. The whole virus thing, spread, PCR test, rapid antigen tests. And it was April of 21 that I met Dr. Friedel. And
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah. And he had a lot of inconvenient truths, a lot of inconvenient questions, and was reprimanded for it at the University of Guelph.
Yeah. And I thought he's just a small researcher at Guelph, no big deal. And he's a very good now colleague. He's done amazing things. And so in October, I was feeding him science. He would talk about things, and I would just, we'd talk. And so, because of how I talk, how I was sidelined, I kind of worked under the radar on things. And I taught at Redeemer University between September of 22 and May of 23. I taught microbiology, PCR testing, and genetics. And I applied for a full-time job, and they hired a less experienced woman to take my spot. And that next fall, I was asked to guest lecture from her course, and I talked 2 hours on the science of the COVID pandemic, and I held nothing back at all. I'm like, this is how the testing worked, the vaccines worked. And so in being let go there in May of 23, a month later, I was asked by Kevin McKernan and Maria Gucci to test those vaccine vials. And so it basically freed up my time, and I could go in the lab test things. And what's cool is all of this work is done in Dr. Byram Bridle's lab. At the same time, he is basically banned from the lab and the office. I was in the lab doing the work. All of those, again, Tim, I'd see them, I'd say, hi, how are you? They're like, how's science going? I'm like, good. I'm doing something big, huge. They're like, what? I'm like, you'll find out when it's out soon. And I put out things, and they're like, what the hell? It's like, how did this happen? Who knew about it? And two, as it's just vaccine vials, I don't require ethics. It was self-funded, and I did nothing wrong at all.
Yeah, your science is impeccable. You're working with Dr. McKernan as well. He uncovered some very scandalous information when he was looking into the vials, and then you backed up his work. So, you're both a force to be dealt with. And it's what you uncovered that is causing a lot of controversy right now. I mean, really, it's not controversial. You're finding factual information when you're doing your investigations. And what Health Canada said, what they promised us. I'm just going to read I guess there's 5 or 6 bullet points here. And I want to point out, too, that a fellow in the United States who's often used as a consultant in the vaccine industry, is a fellow by the name of Dr. Paul for Profit Offit. That's what I've always called him, and that's
All
his
off it.
nickname, Paul for Profit Offit. And Paul Offit, in
Awful
Dr.
off it.
McKernan's presentation, he has a slide about the 4 lies he delivered in one paragraph, and they almost parallel these utterances coming from Health Canada.
Oh yeah.
So, at any rate, so the vaccine messaging that you would have heard in mainstream media during the COVID-19 pandemic, they claimed that the vaccine stays at the site of the injection, that the vaccine is not bioengineered, modified mRNA, that the genetic material will not enter the nucleus, that the DNA is fragmented and not bioactive, that the vaccines are not associated with increase in cancer. Now, each and every one of those statements is a flat out lie.
All
Let's
of
just call it
that
what it
is
is.
false. Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends, David, who were vaccinated, and many of them were not right after they got the vaccine. Something
Oh no.
happened. I had a very good friend who got sick a day or two after his vaccine, and within weeks he died. He had a turbo cancer. I have seen other friends, collapse with a lot of different ailments after they were vaccinated. This is something that should be improving our health. This is something where we should see visible differences after we get vaccinated. We should be feeling, better. But that's not what I saw with this vaccine. And I think you've done enough digging into the vaccines to say, well, there's a lot of questionable ingredients in here, and this could be triggering a lot of problems, a lot of health problems in people. So
Yeah.
what did you discover, and can you explain it to people who right now may be struggling with something called vaccine regret?
So, in the layman terms, we found a pile of synthetic plasmid DNA in the vaccines. In many of the vaccines in Australia, Ireland, they exceed the safety limit of 10 nanograms per dose. Now, is it synthetic? Yes. It's a bioengineered plasmid. All of the uridines have been replaced with N1 methyl pseudouridine, and therefore all of the spike made, we've got a range of spike sizes. It's not all full length intact spike, and therefore it's causing a pile of immune responses. We're seeing turbo cancer on the rise, where we're seeing all kinds of weird health things. Is it because of the toxicity of spike, of the LNPs, of the N1 methyl pseudouridine? And then on the Pfizer plasmid, you've got a SV40 enhancer. In 1999, David Dean shoved out a paper and showed if you put 3 to 10 DNA fragments, which we have here, into a non-dividing cell with an intact nuclear envelope, and 2, all of these LNPs transfect our cells with both DNA and modified mRNA. If you put 3 to 10 copies into a cell, it can move into the nucleus and integrate into the genome of that cell. And we've seen in cell culture, in cancerous cells, overlaid with the Pfizer vaccine, that these fragments will enter the nucleus and integrate into the genome of those cells. At the same time,
And
in
that's frightening.
this,
That's frightening.
it is. It's horrible. And just think, this plasmid was chosen by Pfizer. They could have picked a huge range of plasmid backbones. Some of them with ASV40 parts, some of them without. Moderna's does not have a SV40 part at all. And so someone decided they must use this. And it was chose. At the same time, on this plasmid is a SV40 promoter. That part, it binds to our cell's P53 gene, knocks that out, and the cell can become a cancerous replicating cell.
And this is potentially why we're seeing an increase in cancer, the turbo cancers.
Yes.
And that's frightening. Now, I want to ask you about, these are products that are patented. And many years ago, when Percy Schmeiser was up against Monsanto, and what happened in his case is you have a contamination from neighboring farms, from trucks driving by his farm, and he had his own version of canola that was in the family for years, and it was a very hardy, very sturdy canola. He didn't need to steal Monsanto's genetically engineered canola by contamination or what have you. The gene ended up in his crop, and Monsanto takes Percy Schmeiser to court, and took him. Well, he went through hell for years because of Monsanto. Percy told me that the lawyers for Monsanto looked him in the face and said, "We're using you as a test case." So they want to see how far they can go in contaminating their patented gene technology in nature, changing the nature of nature, okay? And so what the judge ruled basically is said, well, even if the possession was unintentional, in other words, a truck driving by or wind pollination or whatever, that it didn't matter, that Percy had infringed on the patent, okay? Now, there are some other decisions made in that case, so he neither won nor lost, but for us, for the consumer, what does this mean in terms of all this new biotechnology that's going on out there? And they're injecting now something that they own into our bodies. They own that technology. And so if they're going to infringe upon somebody else's property and the judge rules in their favor, what does this mean for the human body when they're injecting their patented gene technology in us? David, I don't know if you have an opinion on that. I know you're not a lawyer, but what would you say to that?
Well, there's a big push now of the whole trans era, transhumans, and this whole push into transhumanism is quite worrying. It's bad. It's downright evil. It's a billions of dollars industry. And our next research phase is to see, is this DNA in the vaccine integrated into a sperm cell? Okay? So, if it is in a sperm cell, and that sperm and an egg make a offspring, our own DNA lines have been changed on a global scale transgenerationally. And therefore, if it is a patented sequence, who owns those cells? Right? Us or them? And two, what are the long-term health effects of these? I don't think the entire range of vaccine health effects will be seen in our lifetime.
Yeah, the consequences of this could take a while before they become very apparent. Now, what else are you seeing? I know you were in the movie Why Can't We Talk About This? You know Michael Osh and Dean Rainey, who did the movie, and I know you're very, very concerned about the damaging side effects of this vaccine, and you really want to reach out and
Yeah.
help as you can. But this movie, why can't we talk about this, about Michael Osh and what happened to Michael Osh is, I mean, it's happening. I mean, it's real, the side effects. This man is basically paralyzed from after he got, I think he was vaccinated 4 times.
Yep.
Is he in palliative care right now? He's in pretty dire shape, as I understand it.
He's in a long-term care home here in Hamilton. He's a local guy. I've known him for about 3 years, and he's a left-wing liberal who was just doing as the government said, as he thought it was safe and effective and was the best thing to do. And he basically listened to the government lies, and he had 4 shots and is severely vaccine injured and will probably never walk again.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible.
The downfall is Michael is not alone in this at all. Kyla Pollock, exact same sort of thing, same health outcomes. I am hearing each week of someone else who was just doing their role, taking the shots, and are severely vaccine injured, and their lives have been changed forever. And our government, as global news, that this week finally talked on, based on our work in that film, showing that the vaccine injury support program is a failed thing. Our own government has put millions into it, and 75 or so percent of this fund is used up in admin costs, and the cash in it is not going to those who are vaccine injured. I know of a local case of a father whose son is vax injured, post-vax, developed leukemia, and VISP denied his case as there is zero evidence of this vaccine causing cancer or changing our DNA. And my own work and Kevin's work in cases like this is being completely ignored.
Ignored. Yeah, yeah.
Our,
And yet you've seen with your research as well, not just this DNA that should not be in these vials, is that you see that there's, I think, 10 trillion DNA copies per dose. 10 trillion DNA copies per dose. And it's an unacceptably high amount of DNA copies. This is not something that should be happening. And they're dismissing this. It's crazy.
Yep. And if it just takes 3 to 10 DNA fragments with a SV40 enhancer on it to change a genome of a cell, and we inject someone with 10 trillion copies inside a lipid nanoparticle transfecting the cell, it's going to cause harm. And the bottom line is, all of this should have been worked out before these shots were given to anybody.
Through the National Citizens Inquiry, I have one of their tomes here, and Kevin McKernan said something very interesting that I didn't think I had ever heard, and that is that when they submitted their research to our governments, they actually did a bait and switch, that they sent the government research that was done on a certain formula and then got their green light to distribute the vaccines, But then when the vaccines came out, I shouldn't even call them vaccines, I'm sorry, gene therapy, whatever. When they came out, they actually switched the formula to what you have been analyzing. So
Yeah.
essentially, what Dr. McKernan is saying is that these were completely untested vaccines.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's using words like criminal. What they're doing is criminal.
It is. And two, the entire SV40 sequence on that plasmid was not disclosed at all to any of the regulatory people
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all.
All cloak
So
and dagger.
it's
Yeah.
like it's there. We're not gonna disclose it. We're gonna let it through. And two, at the same time, in the House of Commons, MP Colin Kerry on the order paper question asked Health Canada, why is this in the vaccine at all? Health Canada informs us it's non bioactive, it's fragmented, and therefore it's no big deal. At the same time, Health Canada emails Pfizer and says, how much is here? Why is it here? And we like this removed. EMA is
Yeah.
also asking for it to be removed. And I've just looked at the brand new booster, and it's just as bad as all of the others. It's not been changed. It's a
Oh, wow.
plug and play system, and they're still in their current booster injecting people with SV40 sequences.
Yeah. Well, so Health Canada
No,
knows the DNA's in there. They've been caught
they know it's
saying, get it out.
they've been
And
caught. They've been
nothing has
told.
changed in the boosters.
They're not doing anything.
Oh, that's crazy. Now, with people who are vaccine regretters, David,
Yep.
there's some statistics that are coming out right now in terms of the alleged efficacy of these vaccines. And mortality rates in the vaxxed patients that have been hospitalized for COVID was 70% higher. The unvaxxed patients had rate much lower at 37%. And also, the most vaccinated places were also the places where the highest incidence of rates of COVID-19. So how is that effective? How, when you see these numbers, I mean, I look at my friends who are vaccinated, and I think almost every single one of them got COVID, allegedly. I've talked to people who work in senior homes and, staff there, PSWs, for example, who've told me
Well,
that after the vaccines came out, that the death rate went up.
yeah. As I say, these vaccines are very effective at causing harm. Are they safe? Absolutely not. And last December, Philip Oldfield, Maria Gucci, Peter McCullough, and I wrote a paper showing these vaccines are not properly tested for safety, and they should be pulled off the market. And so far, there's a worldwide push for a moratorium on these genetic vaccines.
Yes, yeah. And you've been very, very busy on that front, working with a lot of very esteemed scientists on this issue. And I'm just going to name some names, people. If you want to take some notes, I'll put some information in our show notes below. But my goodness, David, you have been extremely busy working on this moratorium, working on educating people about the science and the problems with these vaccines. I am very, very concerned about where this is going to go, by the way, because I noticed a couple of weeks ago in Korea, they had the 2025 Global Vaccine Forum, where they want to flood our society with mRNA vaccines. So we have got to get this message to the world about the risks associated.
and self-amplifying mRNA vaccines.
So it just keeps replicating and replicating in the body.
And there's basically no off switch. And therefore is the whole thing again of the DNA and safety and two is the whole concept of shedding. Is it being shed?
Shedding,
What's being shed? What's the harm caused of this shedding?
Yeah. And then you see they want to use it in agriculture as well, and then maybe even aerosol vaccines. I mean,
it's currently, as Dr. Rydell has found out, it's being used in the rabies shots for people's pets.
So again, is there going to be some shedding? You know, the more it's injected in animals or humans, the greater the chances of shedding. And if they put it in our beef cattle and we're eating beef or drinking dairy, I mean, what does that mean? What are the implications if we're ingesting that food and that animal has been injected with mRNA technology?
Yeah.
It's, I guess time will tell, right?
Time will definitely tell.
So I want to name some groups where you have been so busy here. I'm just going to name a list of projects that you've worked on. The list goes on and on. But the National Citizens Inquiry, and I've got I've got both of their reports here. This is a fantastic book. I'm going to talk a little bit about the National Citizens Inquiry in a bit. There's also the Davidson report from Alberta, which is also requesting a moratorium. And the North Group, I saw a post from you on Twitter X today. I think that Marty Macri, the commissioner of the FDA, and Jay Bhattacharya, the director at NIH, is also exploring this as well, the moratorium through the North Group and the Injection of Truth conference.
This week, USA has joined the North Group, and therefore it's a network of 24 nations so far calling for a stop to these shots.
Fantastic. Then you did the conference, the Injection of Truth, that was out west this year in Canada. And then if you'd like, we can talk about what happened in Australia and that they have launched the David Declaration in your honor. And I guess there's the call to halt moratorium as well. So, I mean, you've got your hat in many pots here. All these groups are basically saying the same thing, that this is reckless technology. We need to take a step back. We need to analyze it. We need to understand the consequences of it. It's too consistent a pattern here, yet our health officials, Public Health, Health Canada, our mainstream media are largely ignoring these messages.
Yeah. Our call to halt 19 letter was sent to 800 people, all of the countries, MPPs, MLAs, MPs, and the medical officers of health. 800 people, and we've had one response. That's it. Andrew Scheer wrote back and thanked us for it, and that was it. It's not being discussed
radio silence,
about at all. It's been radio silence.
There was a glimmer of hope in Australia. You had some councilmen there embrace your work, and they have launched the David Declaration, and so you have made some headway in Australia. Maybe you can talk about what happened there.
Last year I was asked to test vaccine vials for Australia, and they asked 18 labs there to testings. No one would touch it at all, out of fear of losing research funding. And I was asked, I said, sure, I've done this elsewhere. I'll do it, sure. It was 110 times over the legal limit. TGA basically said, no, it's not good. It's small samples size, all of the typical things. In October 11th of last fall, Adrian Ray, who I met in the back of a car in Geneva last year, June, and I just thought he's some random Aussie guy, and he's turned out to be a wonderful guy who's done amazing work. He took my work, he brought it to his council and said, we must start asking things and saying, why is this here? What's our government doing about it? And send to all of the Australian towns and councils a request for help to hold the government accountable. And so far, there's been 12 towns agree and on board to ask what is going on, why, and to hold some sort of a account to build a T, and then in December that they launched the David Declaration. So I'm like, wow. I've lost 5 jobs in the pandemic. I've not had a full-time paid job since May of 2023. It's been over 2 years, and there's international declarations based on this. So it's been tough. It's challenging. It's very difficult to pay bills, rent, food, and yet the vaccine injured are being ignored, marginalized, and they need help, deserve to be listened to, and our government must do everything in their power to help right the harm they have caused.
Well, and it's your testimony and the testimony of so many other people,
So many
other
people.
scientists and journalists. The this group here, the National Citizens Inquiry, I'm going to guide people to their video page. It's on Rumble, and your testimony is very powerful. Dr. McKernan's testimony, very powerful. There's a lot of incredible testimonies there. This is a tribunal. It's a citizen tribunal because, of course, so much of this information is being censored in the media and in the courts. And like you said, the people who have been injured, they need voices. They need recognition. We have to stop this insanity so we can stop the injured from occurring. So at any rate, so the National Citizens Inquiry, they just acknowledged several people at a banquet they had in Kitchener a couple of weeks ago. And what surprised me, David, is that Canada is the only country in the world that is doing this citizen tribunal, that is collecting these very important testimonials from witnesses to basically offer up to the communities around the world to say, listen to this. If you think something's off, you're not wrong. Listen to these incredibly powerful people, these statements that are being made from people like yourself, Dr. McKernan, Brian Bridle, Peter McCullough, David Martin, the list goes on. And so I would basically encourage everybody to watch all of their videos, and the testimonies are so powerful. But they're there for posterity. I mean, this is something that we're going to have for the rest of humanity, that you guys have been shouting from the rooftop about these vaccines, these gene therapies, and warning people. And unfortunately, a lot of people have been sickened or have been killed, because of these vaccines. So I want to talk to you want to segue. This is going to another topic that is related, but I know it's something that you're very passionate about. And I've interviewed Katie Pasitny from the Universal Ostrich Farms,
Ostriches.
and she's a friend of yours.
Yep. Well, I've talked to her 2 times. I've been behind the scenes advising on the science
I
of
heard a
it. So
comment that you mentioned about her ostriches, and for people who don't know this story, the CFIA is trying to cull. I think she has 398 ostriches right now, and the CFIA is basically deemed them all to be biohazards. And so they want to cull every single one of her ostriches who are perfectly healthy and they're actually being used for research purposes to develop an immune supplement.
yep.
Nevertheless, I heard a comment from you which I think it was you said it was actually pretty funny in a dark kind of way. But you said, 2 of her ostriches tested positive for, I think it was the bird flu one, and yet they won't test the other ostriches, and they're all healthy. All of the ostriches are
Oh
healthy.
yeah.
They're not demonstrating any symptoms at this stage. And you said, well, that would be like having an MP being tested positive for virus and then having to cull the entire caucus, even though
Yep.
they're all perfectly healthy. And I thought, oh, that's a great analogy. in, like I said, in a dark
Exactly.
kind of way. But it's unfair what they're doing to her, and it's
It's
just
insane.
crazy.
Yeah, it's completely insane. These are based on a PCR test, which I'm a PCR lab guy. Okay, sure. It's a test on 2 dead birds. Are the other birds sick? Are the other birds having avian flu? Well, all of the other birds have been healthy since end of December. It's been 6 months.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's a typical government head in the sand push to cull birds based on a policy and not based on common sense, evidence based science.
Yeah, they just want to harass the small family farms.
And
That's
well,
basically the pattern I've seen
it's
now for a
like
long, long time.
this on basically multiple farms nationwide, and it's to the whole stamp out thing needs to be re-examined, re-looked at. And yes, if it's a chicken barn and one of them sick and it spreads fast, okay, it's a short-lived bird for food. These are 350, 400-pound ostriches, which live 75 years old. That they are not a food bird. CFIA is Canadian Food Inspection Agency. There is no risk in these birds transmitting things to our food source, and two, it's based on 2 tested birds 6 months ago, and therefore, if these birds have been tested 6 months ago and can be now culled, is there anything stopping CFIA culling birds on a farm which tested positive 6 or 8 months ago? How far back is acceptable? It's not based on what's going on now.
No, no, no. I remember when I wrote The Great Bird Flu Hoax with Dr. Mercola, I got a call from a farmer out in BC, And the CFIA was threatening to go around and cull all the backyard birds that were perfectly healthy. And they were
They're perfectly
standing at the
healthy.
end of their driveways with guns to ward off the CFIA. I mean, the
Wow.
problem was the factory farms. That's where the problem was coming from.
Yeah.
And, those are very unhygienic conditions.
Yep. And it's a pile of birds in one cramped, congested space. And if avian flu is in there, it spreads fast. In these birds, it doesn't. Most of them have been sick in the past, are now healthy. All of the young birds, some of them got sick and have recovered and are now fine. It's like us. We get sick, we recover. So if we can't cull all of the caucus, why are we now doing the opposite things with the farm?
Well, I wish Katie very well.
Oh, I
What
know.
they're doing to her, to the ostriches. I mean, it's
It,
uncalled for, and it's like you
it's
said, is lacking
insane,
all
uncalled for.
common sense.
Yeah, and two, the FIA has no intention of following evidence-based scientific fact. It's about this is the policy, and therefore we must follow this. It's like, does it make sense? No, then why are we doing it, right?
Yeah, and science is about collaboration. It's about asking questions, about trial and error.
Exactly.
It's not about creating ultimatums.
No. No.
This is not science. That's not what they're doing. It's politics.
It's politics, and it's a clear evidence of government overreach.
No question about that. Now, you have some projects. I know that you're acting as an expert witness in some cases for people, and that's very helpful.
In some
That's
cases, yep.
great. And you talked about testing sperm to see
Sperm samples.
how much of this DNA could be showing up in the sperm and then the offspring. You also talked in another podcast about a blood test that is available in Germany where you can test for the spike protein. We don't have this test in Canada, and I think you were talking about maybe trying to get that lab test here in Canada.
Yeah.
What would that reveal if we can test people who've been vaccinated with this mRNA technology? What would we see in the blood if indeed the spike protein is still active?
So our current tests are all for spike IgG antibodies, and that's it. Antibodies show us has this person been vaxxed or sick, and therefore have a immune response to something. Okay, what we need is an antigen test to tell how much spike antigen or protein is basically in our cells, in our blood. And there's no test available for this in North America at this time. And therefore, all of the detox methods, are they working? Are they not? Like, it's basically at this point in time all guesswork. Do things work? If so, how much? And sure, a lot of these detox methods are helping. A lot of people feel better.
If you test the
Yep.
blood,
If you test
so for
blood,
example, I know Dr. Peter McCullough and others have a detox
sure,
protocol to try
yeah,
and get rid of the spike protein.
right.
And it's hard to know if those protocols are working, I assume. Like, I don't know that there's any way to test for that. So would this blood test
We
show a
have
reduction in
none
spike protein?
at this point in time, and therefore there's a lab in Germany and Italy with a spike test. I know of another test that is being worked on at this point in time. I can't say much. I'm hoping in the next 6 to 8 months to have a test here available to test for spike protein itself.
Is that a blood test?
Yes.
Oh, I know a lot of people are going to want to know. They're going to want to know what the long-term effects are of this, and if it's as a simple test to see.
Exactly. And then if I take this, are my levels going down, staying the same? Is it getting worse? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't
But again, if you look at things
know.
like a D-dimer test and a blood test, a lot of people have elevated D-dimers after they've been
Yeah.
vaccinated. So that's a sign that
Yeah.
there's a lot of inflammation. People with heart issues, things like that.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
So many people
And
got myocarditis after they were vaccinated.
yeah.
I mean, the
So
list goes
is that
on. And then the
yeah.
long COVID from not just having had COVID potentially, but from the vaccines,
Well,
chronic fatigue.
as Robert Redfield said in April, a lot of the long COVIDs are basically vaccine
Yeah.
injuries. As we've seen in the HIV/AIDS era, there's a drop in CD4 cells. These vaccines are basically wiping out CD8 cells, and it's the same effect. It's just, yeah, a different way. And so it'll change lives for decades to come.
Oh, and all of this was done with so much censorship. Nobody had informed consent. It was like people
There
had a gun
was
to their heads. Either
zero
you
informed
lose your
consent.
job if you don't get vaccinated. I mean, none of this, all of this coercion, I mean, is so inhumane what has happened in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I should be in charge of my own lab doing high tech, awesome science, and well, called for, and I'm here trying to
People are afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid to lose their income,
fight.
so
I
they toe
know
the party line. And
exactly.
that's what happens when you have a debt-ridden society. They do what they're told.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
all want their big houses and their fancy cars, and they're paying for kids to go to universities, and so when you have a debt-ridden society, people are going to do what they're told.
Yeah.
But then we need people like you who are honest and have integrity and step up to the plate when we really need you. And your voices often get ignored or worse. I worry about what happened to Kerry Mullis, the fellow who invented the PCR test. He
Yeah.
died mysteriously in 2019.
Yeah.
And he said, he was on record for saying, this is not a test that you use on humans, like for testing for illness.
So, yeah, it's a messed up, evil world that's being exposed and seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's
it's a fight that's worth the fight and the time and stuff, and it's very hard.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, I commend you for all the work that you're doing. And I'm going to put all of your information below in the show notes, including a Give, Send, Go link if people want to help you out, David, because I know you've been out of work and I know how committed you are to this
yeah.
cause, which is really going to help us universally. So we need to support what you're doing. Before we sign
Thank you,
off,
Pam.
I want you to control the switches here and tell me, is there anything that we missed talking about that you want to share with people?
No, I do think that the vaccine injured have a big that they deserve to be fought for and listened to. And tides are changing slowly. And although this past week, our ex-chief medical officer, Teresa Tam and Bonnie Henry have both received the Order of Canada, what they deserve, I hope, sometime will be coming.
Goes around, comes around, David.
Exactly. And yes, someone at some point for all of this mess will be held accountable. And
Like
I'm
another
just
Nuremberg trial. We need another Nuremberg trial here.
I'm thankful to have been guided and steered and kept safe, and that I'm being used to do amazingly good, powerful science.
Well, thank you for the truth in science. I've been exposing corruption in science for a long, long time because I had some very dear friends who were scientists who taught me what was going on with the censorship in science. Basically, science is used for marketing reasons right now, but we need true science in order to protect society, to protect our children. It's crazy that it's come to this. How corrupt it's become. So we need scientists like yourself. And so I really congratulate you for all the work that you're doing and your bravery. And like I said, I'm going to put all of your contacts beneath, but certainly I will encourage people to go to your Substack page, which is called Courageous Truth, which really summarizes who you are and what you're all about. You are a very courageous man. And please keep up the great work, and anything I can do to help get your message out, please let me know. We can always do another podcast anytime. I ran into you at the NCI banquet a couple of weeks ago, so hopefully I'll see you again soon. And please do keep in touch and keep up the wonderful work that you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you for taking your valuable time to join me in today's podcast. Please join me in my other podcast, Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen, where we discuss other matters related to circadian biology. If you would like more information about my health coaching services, please visit my website, www.pamkilleen.com. And now for the disclaimer. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. We are not licensed healthcare providers, and our content is not a substitute for professional medical diagnosis, advice, or treatment. For personalized health guidance, or if you have a specific medical concern, please consult a qualified medical professional. They can assess your individual health needs and offer recommendations tailored to you. By listening to our podcast, you agree to this disclaimer. We assume no responsibility or liability for actions taken based on the information provided herein.